Hello and welcome to the Integrated Rehab and Performance Podcast. My name is Dr. Nick Curtis and I'm running the show here at the Integrated Rehab and Performance Center in Nashville, Tennessee. More specifically, we are in Brentwood. So for today's golf episode, we are talking about just wrapping up December in the clinic. Some of the things that I've seen, some of the things that I'm seeing recurring over and over again, and then just a couple of updates on things as well. So we will dive into that today. So there is two main things that I want to talk about from December 2024, kind of wrapping it up. One is a low back case where we have symptoms that are just one of the most common description of low back pain in a golfer. Hurts after a round of golf. Sometimes it doesn't. If I play multiple rounds, multiple days, then it definitely does. It is this low back ache. It gets better with rest. It hurts a little bit more with activity, especially golf and twisting. It's been around for a couple years. Wants to get it taken care of. Also wants to be able to play with grandchildren, things like that. Perfect goals for the clinic. Now, what are some things that we are finding in this case? What we found first and foremost, and then we've talked about this kind of at length, hip internal rotation limited on both sides. We're talking about 15 degrees on both sides. So it's a pretty severe limitation, about half of what we want. We talk about the hips. The hips are so important with low back pain because if we're talking true hip rotation, internal rotation or external rotation, in this case internal, if the pelvis can't rotate on top of the hip, because again, we're in a closed chain in the golf swing. What that means is our feet are planted on the ground and they don't leave the ground. And maybe for Scotty Scheffler, they do a little bit, but still the same point applies. The femurs are connected to the tibias, which are connected to the foot, right? The feet are planted. We are creating rotation by rotating the pelvis on top of the femurs. If we have limited access to that motion, pelvic on femur rotation, then what else is attached to that pelvis? The low back, right? The lumbar spine, the sacrum. So if we are rotating through that pelvis and we run out of room in that hip joint, that pelvis is going to continue, or it's going to try to continue to rotate. And if it can't, how is it going to get your body into that backswing position that you get into? It's going to rotate or start putting torque into that low back to do it instead. The moment that hip runs out of room, the body is still saying, hey, we know we need to get further. We keep getting told we need to create length in this backswing, or this is what it needs to, this is the point we need to get to have an effective swing. You're going to get that rotation from somewhere else besides the hip, and it's going to be the low back. And over, time doing that, especially years, we are going to have some chronic low back pain. This is why we look at the hips. You have no pain in the hips, and yet the hips are a keystone to this case. Limited internal rotation on both sides at the hips. The good news is, in this case, with some of our early stage treatment, is we had a great responder. So we did a lot of breathing and pelvic orientation work, which cleared up those hips fast. We did a little bit of work in that hip capsule where we actually used some bands to help create space in that hip capsule, kind of a classic hip capsule opener, which did a great job of creating some space quickly. And then we did some breathing and pelvic orientation stuff where we got our feet up on the wall. We improved our diaphragmatic breathing. We improved our rib cage mobility and our stability and control over the pelvis, which again help open up space at that hip joint. And then we created a little bit of speed, a little bit of strength work on top of that. And again, we had opened up space so quickly with those earlier stage things, and then creating a little bit of speed and strength work on top of that. You can think of it help kind of solidify that stuff in there. So we got that hip where he was walking in with a little bit of more hip rotation. We started working the process of creating some strength through that new range of motion. And believe it or not, comes back, notices he's hitting the ball farther, notices he's not having pain after a round of golf. He's doing that without having pain. The ball is flying a little bit further, just a little bit, and without pain. If we have missing hip rotation, and we create hip rotation, and we create strength into that rotation and learn how to use it quickly, that's power, then both things can happen. We take stress off that low back, and we also improve your ability to create club head speed and therefore ball speed. So again, a classic low back pain case where we are working a lot on hip. We also are doing some care for the upset tissue of that low back and low back strengthening. We're working on just about everything, but this is a big part, was that hip internal rotation and then controlling the ability to rotate that pelvis on that hip. Another fun case here now, a NGAC golfer, Nashville Golf and Athletic Club guy, has some issues with, first of all, postural issues, first and foremost. Sometimes has discomfort at the shoulders, sometimes has discomfort in the low back. It's not necessarily common. It kind of comes and goes strangely. Sometimes it hurts, most of the time it doesn't. But what we found was postural restrictions, a very C posture kind of swing setup. And what we got was a severe thoracic spine rotation restriction. Now, relating to his shoulder pain, when we are lacking so much or have such a kyphosis or the rounding of that thoracic spine, that mid-back, we put a ton of extra stress on those shoulders. So from time to time, he's having low back pain, he's having shoulder pain, and right in the middle there is that T-spine, and it makes a lot of sense that we have some big restrictions to that T-spine and how that could be related to his shoulder and low back pain. So besides working on the tissue of the shoulder and that low back, we also want to make sure and are working on that thoracic spine. And through testing, we found, definitely some restrictions, limitations through there. And the big thing that started creating a lot of space and improving that was our breath work, but not just any breath work, stuff that we were doing to get rib cage mobility again. So we talk about that T-spine being restricted, but how much of that is because of, or how much can we improve of that by working on the rib cage? The rib cage connects at that thoracic spine. It's part of that thoracic spine. If the rib cage has restrictions in it, or the capsules of the rib cage have become restricted and they don't want to internally rotate or externally rotate or expand out and then come back in, or they've lost their ability to really internally rotate and take space away in that thoracic spine, especially for breathing. Again, this just creates a mid-back that is tight and doesn't want to rotate or extend. So we've used breath work in certain ways to create expansion back into that rib cage, free up space. This helps us free up the bigger muscles of that mid-back and the joints themselves with some hands-on chiropractic stuff as well. But that was the big one. It was getting him to learn to pull his diaphragm down again, use the obliques to create internal rotation at that rib cage again, and then hold that internal rotation as we breathe back in, creating expansion throughout the rib cage again, and as opposed to just that chest expansion. So now we get the chest and the lower rib cage to expand all together, and we get more expansion this way as well. So a big win for this patient client was early on with the different breathing strategies that we incorporated into the physical treatment plan that had kind of jump started our early progress to get that T-spine moving better and taking some pressure off the shoulders and low back. So those were two rather interesting points from December with some different golfers working on, one BCC guy and an NGAC guy. Otherwise, just some updates on the clinic. It would be sharing time on 2 locations. One is the normal Nippers Corner at CrossFit Trivium Nippers Corner, kind of on the east side of Brentwood, and then another location on the west side of Brentwood, kind of in Ward Circle, that Maryland Farm area, where I will be more often now. So that's kind of an exciting development where I will be working there more, especially with the golfers from this Brentwood area. And besides that, I just want to wish everyone kind of a happy holidays here. We're just finishing up with the holidays, so hope everything went well, and excited to kind of get back to treating and meeting more Nashville golfers. So excited to get to that phase, 2025, early 2025, ready to rock, ready to see you guys in clinic and keep things moving in the right direction. Thanks for listening. Bye.